They say not every crown brings peace, and not every heart hides poverty. Some treasures cannot be weighed in gold. Adanna walked through the dusty paths of Umuaka village, her slender frame wrapped in a simple woven cloth, her footsteps light but her spirit heavy. The market women turned their heads when she passed. Some admired her grace, others whispered in envy. For Adanna was not only beautiful, with skin the shade of rich cocoa and eyes deep as midnight, but she carried a kindness that made strangers feel like family. Yet, in the same breath that praised her, the village tongues also wagged with gossip. The king desires her. King Oba of Umuaka was known far and wide. His palace glittered with ivory pillars and golden ornaments. His voice commanded fear. His wealth commanded respect. And now he had set his eyes on Adanna. It should have been an honor. Women dreamed of becoming queen. Families prayed for such fortune. But for Adanna, the thought of being the king's wife felt like a prison cloaked in silk. She had seen how King Oba looked at women not as souls, but as possessions, trophies to display like ornaments in his grand palace. One evening, the king's messengers arrived. Drums thundered across the village as they announced, "By the order of His Majesty, King Oba, Adanna is summoned to the palace. She is to become the next queen." The widow, Mamankem, Adanna's mother, trembled with both pride and fear. "My daughter," she whispered, "this is a blessing. Think of the life you will have. No hunger, no suffering. You will lift our family out of poverty." But Adanna's heart was elsewhere. For weeks she had secretly met with Chike, a poor farmer whose hut sat at the edge of the forest. His hands were rough from tilling the soil, but his heart was gentle. With him she laughed freely, without fear. With him she was not a jewel to be owned, but a woman to be cherished. That night, when the moonlight painted silver patterns across the floor, Adanna sat by her mother. Her voice trembled, but her spirit stood tall. "Mother, I cannot marry the king. My heart belongs to another." Mama Nkem froze. Her wrinkled face darkened with worry. "Another? Who?" "Chike," Adanna whispered. Her mother gasped. "Chike, a poor farmer? Have you lost your senses? The king offers you a palace and you choose a hut? He offers you gold and you choose sweat and soil? Adanna, this is madness." But Adanna's eyes shone with quiet fire. "Gold cannot buy love, Mama, and crowns cannot promise happiness. I will not be a queen in chains. I would rather be free in a hut, loved and seen." Her mother wept, torn between pride and fear. She knew the king's anger was not a small flame, but a fire that could consume. The next day, Adanna stood before the king's court. The palace floor gleamed with polished marble, guards lined the hall, and courtiers bowed their heads in reverence. King Oba sat on his golden throne, his robe heavy with jewels, his eyes glinting with desire. "Adanna," he said, his voice booming like a drum, "the gods themselves have blessed you. Today I offer you the crown of Umuaka. Say yes, and your life will be filled with riches beyond measure." The court erupted in cheers. Women glanced at her with envy. Men nodded with approval. All expected her to kneel and accept. But Adanna's heart pounded. She lifted her chin and spoke, her voice steady as the wind that shakes the tallest tree. "My king, I am honored by your offer, but I cannot accept. My heart belongs to another, and my life is not for sale." The court gasped. A murmur swept the hall like a storm. The king's face hardened, his smile cuddled into rage. "Another!" he cracked like thunder. "You dare refuse me?" Adanna stood her ground. "Yes, my king, for true wealth is love, and without it, even a crown is heavy with sorrow." The king's fist slammed against the throne, the ground trembled. His pride had been pierced before his entire court. His voice dripped with venom. "You will regret this, gal. No one rejects King Oba and lives in peace." The courtiers fell silent, the air grew heavy, and as Adanna turned her back on the throne, choosing the uncertain path of love over the glitter of a crown, whispers spread through the palace like wildfire. The storm was only beginning.
In Umuaka, news traveled faster than the Harmattan wind. By sunrise, every market stall, every well, every compound hummed with the same shocking story. Adanna refused the king. She chose a poor farmer instead. The women selling peppers shook their heads in disbelief. The palm wine tappers chuckled bitterly, saying she had cursed her own destiny. Children whispered her name with both awe and fear. But none of it compared to the fury boiling within the palace. King Oba paced the marble halls, his robe dragging like the tail of an angry lion. His pride had been torn before his chiefs, his throne mocked by a village girl. He would not rest until Adanna paid. At the same time, Chike worked under the sun, sweat dripping from his brow as he swung his hoe into the dry earth. His heart was heavy with fear, but steady with love. When Adanna walked toward him, carrying a calabash of water, he paused, staring at her as though she was light itself. "You have set the fire in the king's heart," Chike said softly, his voice trembling. "You understand what this means?" Adanna placed the calabash in his hands. Her eyes, though tired, held no regret. "I understand, Chike, but I will not trade my soul for comfort. Let the king rage. Let the world mock me. I have chosen love, and love is my crown." Chike pressed his forehead against hers, his rough palms cupping her delicate face. For a moment, the world was silent. But silence never lasts in a village where envy thrives. That evening, King Oba summoned his chiefs. They gathered under the torchlight, their shadows dancing like demons on the palace walls. "She has insulted the throne," the king thundered. "I will make her name a curse in this land. I will take from her what she treasures most, peace." The chiefs bowed low, though fear flickered in their eyes. None dared remind the king that Adanna had broken no law, for Oba's wrath was law enough. The next day, strange rumors spread. Traders began to refuse to sell to Adanna's mother. Old debts were suddenly called in. Neighbors who once shared firewood now turned their backs. One night, as the moon glowed pale, Maman came coughed until her chest rattled. Her body, frail as dry leaves, shivered on the mat. "Daughter," she whispered, clutching Adanna's hand, "what curse have you brought upon us? The king's shadow darkens our door." Tears burned Adanna's eyes, but she held her mother tightly. "No curse, Mama, only truth, only love, and love will carry us through." But as days passed, food grew scarce, and Adanna's once radiant mother faded like a candle in the wind. Meanwhile, the villagers mocked. "See how the queen who rejected the crown now begs for yam peels. Love cannot fill a hungry stomach. She chose a hoe over a throne, foolish girl." Each word pierced Adanna, but she stood firm. But in her quiet heart, fear gnawed like a rat in the dark. One evening, after another long day of tending to her sick mother and helping Chike in the fields, Adanna sat alone under the udala tree. The stars above twinkled like silent witnesses. She lifted her face to the heavens and prayed, ancestors, give me strength, for I have chosen love, but love is heavy when the world turns against you." Her prayer was interrupted by a sudden rustle. Out of the shadows, a bent figure appeared, an old woman with eyes sharp as fireflies. She carried a staff carved with ancient symbols. "Child," the woman said, her voice deep as the forest night, "do not drown in despair. The crown you refused is not the only destiny that awaits you. Within your hands lies a gift that even kings cannot buy." Adanna froze, her heart racing. Who are you?" The old woman's lips curled into a faint smile. "I am Mama Ifeoma, keeper of herbs, seer of paths. The storm is far from over, but in your suffering lies the seed of your power." Adanna could not speak again, but the old woman stepped closer, placing a bundle of dried herbs in her hands. The scent was strong, bitter, alive. "Your mother's sickness can be eased with this herb, and when the time is right, your light will outshine even Oba's golden dawn." Adanna trembled. Was this madness? Was this hope? As the old woman disappeared into the darkness, her words echoed like a prophecy carved into stone. "Not every hurt hides poverty. Some hurts are temples where true power is born." Adanna clutched the herbs to her chest, her spirit flickering between fear and faith. The war with the king had only just begun.
The sun rose over Umuwaka, painting the dusty paths with gold. But for Adanna, the light did not bring comfort. Her mother's cough had worsened, leaving Mama Income weak and trembling. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and the whispers of the villagers echoed louder with each passing day. "See the girl who turned away from the king," they said. "Now she kneels before poverty." Tike held her hand as they worked the fields, his grip firm, his eyes full of silent encouragement. "Adanna," he said, "the world may mock, but your heart is brave. Keep faith. We endure, and the sun will rise for us too." Yet, endurance alone could not fill empty stomachs. The couples scavenged for vegetables, helped neighbors with chores for small gifts of green, and each night they prayed beneath the moon's pale gaze. One evening, as Adanna washed the clay pots by the river, the water whispered a secret to her soul. She recalled Mama Ifoma's herbs and words. Carefully, she prepared a simple remedy, grinding leaves and roots with hands that had learned both labor and love. She gave the mixture to her mother, and slowly her mother's color returned. Word of the miraculous recovery spread quietly. Neighbors came, not to mock, but to ask for advice. Chike, too, marveled at her quiet wisdom. "Your hand, they do more than toil. They heal." Adanna smiled, but she knew the battle was far from over. King Oba's shadow loomed still. One morning, a royal messenger arrived in the village. He brought a decree, his eyes cold as the winter sky. "By the command of King Oba, the harvest of all fields near the village is claimed. You are warned. Defy the throne and suffer." The villagers gasped. Fear gripped them, but Adanna stood tall. Chike placed a steady hand on her shoulder. He said, "We will not bend. We may be poor, but our hearts are stronger than his gold." As the days passed, Adanna discovered that her skill with herbs and remedies became a beacon of hope. She healed sick children, tended wounds, and even helped elders regain their strength. Her name spread quietly beyond the village, whispered with respect. The girl who chose love and brought life. King Oba, hearing of her growing influence, could not bear it. Pride turned to rage, and rage to obsession. He sent spies disguised as travelers,
to watch her every move. Every healed wound, every grateful smile was reported back to the palace, like arrows piercing his ego. One evening, as Adanna and Chike returned home from the fields, they found a small bundle at their doorstep. A note lay atop it, inked in bold letters. "Renounce the farmer, return to the palace, or your family shall pay the price." Adanna held the note, her fingers trembling, but her eyes shone with fire. "Chike, they cannot break us. We have chosen this path together. We endure, we rise, and no gold nor threat can sway us." But the threat was real. That night, a commotion shook the village. Soldiers sent by the king arrived demanding their grain and scaring the villagers. Mothers clutched their children, elders whispered prayers, and Adanna felt the weight of responsibility pressing down like the hot sun. But she refused to yield. Guided by Mama Ifoma's words and the knowledge of the healing herbs, she organized the villagers, sharing what little they had. She taught them simple remedies, how to protect their harvests, and how to support one another. Slowly, unity replaced fear. In the quiet of the night, Adanna sat beneath the urulara tree once more. She held her mother's hand, feeling the warmth and life returning with each heartbeat. She looked at Chike, who leaned against the tree, eyes tired but steadfast. She thought, "This is only the beginning. The king's wrath is fire, but love is our shield, and soon his fire will burn only himself." The stars above seemed to pulse with silent approval. Somewhere in the distance, a storm gathered, dark clouds swirling with promise and peril. Adanna's heart beat steady. The path of love and courage was fraught with danger, but she had chosen it willingly. And in that choice, she discovered a truth no king's wealth could ever buy. Strength lies not in gold, but in heart, courage, and the will to endure.
The winds of change began to stir over Umwaka. The once haughty King Oba, whose golden halls had echoed with laughter at Adanna's refusal, now paced in restless fury. His wealth, though vast, could not command loyalty when fear and hunger gnawed at his people. Crops failed, rivers dried, and his subjects whispered discontent behind closed doors. The throne he had once thought unshakable now wobbled beneath the weight of arrogance and envy. Meanwhile, Adanna and Chike's humble hut had become a sanctuary for the village. Mothers brought sick children, elders sought guidance, and even the shyest farmers asked for help in times of drought. With Mama Ifeoma's herbs and Adanna's wisdom, they healed wounds, cured fevers, and nurtured life where despair had once reigned. Every day, respect for Adanna grew, not because she wielded wealth, but because she wielded compassion, courage, and knowledge. One morning, as Adanna gathered fresh herbs by the river, she noticed the villagers whispering excitedly. A messenger had arrived, not from the king, but from a distant town. They had heard of her skill and invited her to help heal a terrible sickness spreading through their village. Chike's eyes sparkled with pride. "Your gift is no longer hidden, Adanna. The world begins to see what I have always known." But as their reputation rose, so did the king's wrath. King Oba, desperate to reclaim control, sent envoys to the village, demanding that Adanna return to the palace. When the villagers refused, citing her help and leadership, Oba's anger turned to obsession. He vowed that if he could not have her obedience, he would have her ruin. One night, under a sky heavy with thunder, the king personally rode to Umwaka, his armor glinting like cold fire. The villagers trembled, but Adanna stepped forward, her mother and Chike behind her. "King Oba, I do not fear your wealth or your threats. My heart belongs to love and service, not crowns and chains." Oba's eyes blazed. "Do you defy me still? Do you mock my throne? I serve a higher crown than yours, one of truth, of courage, and of care for others." The confrontation shocked the villagers. Even the bravest of Oba's guards faltered under the calm strength emanating from Adanna. His palace-trained intimidation meant nothing here. In the heart of the village, love and justice was stronger than fear. And so, the king's plans began to unravel. Crops in his lands withered under neglect, his treasury drained by corruption and mismanagement, and his people, inspired by Adanna's courage, began to flee, seeking refuge with her. Whispers of her deeds, her wisdom, and her healing powers spread far and wide, turning even the neighboring villages against Oba. Desperation gnawed at the king. One fateful day, a messenger collapsed at his palace gates with a letter from the village chief. "King Oba, we no longer bow to fear. We follow Adanna, who brings life, hope, and justice. Your throne is empty in spirit, for hearts cannot be bought with gold." Oba's face contorted with rage and disbelief. For the first time, he understood power is meaningless when respect and loyalty cannot be earned. Meanwhile, Adanna's life flourished. The village prospered under her care. Chike's farm thrived, and Mama Nkem regained strength, her cheeks flushed with health once more. Adanna had transformed not through wealth or titles, but through unwavering courage, service, and the love she shared freely. Yet, the story was not complete. The king, humbled and broken, had one final act to attempt. He rode to the village under the cloak of night, seeking an audience with Adanna, not as a ruler, but as a man stripped of his pride. The villagers whispered in fear. Chike stepped protectively in front of Adanna, but she motioned for him to stand down. Her eyes, calm but commanding, met Oba's. "You have suffered what your pride has sown. The question now is yours. Will you choose humility, or shall you remain a prisoner of your own envy?" Oba fell to his knees, tears glistening in the torchlight. I was wrong. I see now that true power is not in gold or crowns, but in love, in respect, in service. Please, help me, guide me." Adanna looked at him, her heart torn between justice and mercy. She could have let him suffer in silence, watched him fall completely. But in that moment, she saw the man, not the king, human, not ruler. "Rise," she said finally. "Let this be a lesson. The heart that serves others will always triumph over the heart that serves only itself." And so, King Oba stood, humbled, and began his journey towards redemption. Adanna had not only risen above hardship, but had also become a beacon of hope, a living testament that love, courage, and wisdom outweigh wealth and power. The storm cleared from the skies above Umuaka. Birds sang freely, rivers flowed, and the villagers celebrated a new era, one guided by the heart, not by fear.
The village of Umuaka awoke to a morning unlike any other. The air was crisp, birds sang with joy, and even the sun seemed to linger a moment longer over the horizon, as if blessing the land that had endured so much pain, yet bloomed with hope. Adanna stood at the edge of her small farm, watching Chike tend the crops. Their hands met briefly, palms brushing, a silent promise of shared strength and future dreams. Mama Nkem, now vibrant and strong, walked toward them with a basket of herbs and fresh bread. Smiling through eyes that had witnessed despair, but now glowed with gratitude. Word had spread across the lands. The girl who had refused a king's wealth, who had chosen love over luxury, who had endured hardship and guided her village with wisdom, had become a legend. Traders traveled from far villages to see her, seeking her knowledge and blessing. She was no longer merely Adanna. She was a symbol, proof that courage and compassion triumph over greed and pride. King Oba, humbled by his journey, arrived under the shade of the great Udala tree. He no longer wore his golden crown or robes. Instead, he came as a man, seeking forgiveness and wisdom. The villagers watched silently, hearts pounding, as he knelt before Adanna. "Adanna," he said, his voice low but earnest. "I was blinded by pride and greed. I sought to command hearts with fear, but I have learned that true respect cannot be taken. It must be earned. Teach me how to be worthy of those I lead." Adanna looked upon him, her eyes steady and filled with compassion. She could have reminded him of his cruelty, of the suffering he had caused. But instead she extended her hand, offering not humiliation, but guidance. "Arise, Oba. Let this be the lesson. Power is not in crowns or wealth. It is in service, in courage, and in the heart's capacity to love and forgive." The villagers erupted in quiet applause, understanding the weight of what had just occurred. Life in Umuaka was no longer ruled by fear, but by hope, unity, and the knowledge that even the humblest heart can shape destiny. Adanna turned to the children playing by the river. She said, "Remember, it is not the riches you gather, nor the throne you inherit, but the kindness you sow that will blossom in the world." Her words were carried on the wind, through the trees, into the hearts of all who heard. Even Chike, strong and steadfast, felt tears of pride and love sting his eyes. Together, they had faced envy, cruelty, and hardship, and emerged not just alive, but victorious in spirit. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, Adanna looked at the horizon and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Her journey had been long, filled with tears, fear, and uncertainty, but it had also been rich in lessons, love, and the triumph of the human heart. King Oba returned to his palace a changed man, no longer seeking dominion over others, but striving to lead with justice and humility. The villagers thrived, the crops flourished, and Adanna's story spread far and wide, becoming a legend that would inspire generations. And so, the moral of the tale was clear. Love and courage are greater than wealth and power. Forgiveness and wisdom outshine revenge and pride. And the heart that serves others will always be the true ruler of life. Before we end, think for a moment. If you were in Adanna's place, would you forgive the king or let him face the full weight of his actions? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Share this story with those who need hope. And remember, like Adanna, you too can turn hardship into triumph. Stay tuned, for another powerful story is coming soon, ready to ignite your heart and remind you of the strength within.